My small liberal arts college in upstate New York was meant to be a progressive and inclusive haven. But after 3 semesters here, I've adjusted to a different reality than what I expected. Despite promises of diversity, allyship, and wokeness, I was surprised by the general unwillingness to learn, understand, or even acknowledge international cultures. The more international students I talked to, the more I realized that this was a shared experience. I wanted to, in the best and most comfortable way possible, document this. I do want to acknowledge the privilege that the participants in this video are coming from. We acknowledge that prejudice comes in many forms and are not equating our experiences to other vulnerable experiences across America. We'd simply like to share what makes us feel alienated on a day-to-day basis in our college life.
In Sudan, when I was learning stuff, they had us learning Arabic and English. They had us
exactly.
And so you were learning that from a young age. So you were already fluent in English, but you were also fluent in Arabic. And obviously we weren't the best English speakers, but at the same time it was normalized for you to So when I came here and I went to school, the first thing that kids would talk about, we're talking about accents, the first thing that kids would talk about was how my English was so weird because I pronounced stuff weird.
No, but it's why do you assume that our medium of education is not English? I get it. Our country is 15 national languages. Fine, yes, we do have a second language. We do have schools that are predominantly also teaching kids different subjects in different languages.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah.
I'm fluent in English.
Yeah. And that's all that matters.
Exactly. And it's and the other one is English your first language?
When people are your English is so good, I'm out here speaking 5 different languages. What do you speak?
What do you speak?
Americans spell without the E's or the U's. It's so upset. My teacher went through my essay and was that's not how you spell color. And I was yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Assimilating is only the onus is on you. You try and adjust to the society that you're in and do your best to change your accent, make your name easier to pronounce, which I do all the time, and stuff like that. But then integration is actual systemic, the society trying to welcome you in and doing their best to, and which would be miles easier for them to do, for all of them to adjust to just one person. With a little bit of different values and one person to try to adjust to an entire new society and a full paradigm shift and stuff like that. Just be welcoming, just be understanding, and it requires so little from your end. It's just being open to maybe being wrong about some stuff or not knowing things. You don't have to be defensive, you don't have to be woke about every single thing. I'm not expecting you to. Just chill. Really just be open to knowing new things and understanding different cultures.
I moved here and I still don't understand Americans. I still don't get how they think. I don't understand a lot of the cultural references. I don't understand the history because I never had to learn American history, and they make these references to things in the past, and they're oh, you get that. I've actually never heard about that, and it makes me feel uneducated, and there will be small digs where I would be oh, I've never heard of that, and people laugh because they're oh, it's to them it's so obvious, but
we know double the political environments. We know our country's political environment, and we know what's going on in the U.S. And we know pop culture references. We know bits of each different ones' histories. We know twice the amount of information they do, so we're gonna slip in some places.
Also, none of us walk into this country expecting them to know jack shit about us, except for maybe the basics, and half the time we don't even know that much. But I feel there's so many people here that are so outspoken about how much they hate the systems and the people and how not woke they are, and they're so ignorant, and all these Americans said the American. But then anytime that I've said any sort of slight, and unless it's based in historical fact, if it's just something that I feel, or if it's just maybe a preconception that I have, or just an opinion that I've formed about how things are here, it's always met with so much defensiveness. It's immediate wow, how could you say this about my country? Squared up, posed up, how can you and that happened to us the first term with someone But it was just sort of like this really awkward interaction of me saying like, that's not what I meant to say, and then them being like, how can you say these things about America, my homeland or whatever, which is not what you expect. Because we go to a campus where everyone's Instagram stories are openly critiquing every aspect of this country at all times.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of like, there's so much dissonance there. Like, where are you at?
It's very odd.
First semester, last fall, and I was just hanging out with a big group of people, like the 15 people that were on campus anyway. And someone was talking to another person, and I introduced where I'm from. I'm from Bombay in India, and they are from somewhere in the US, and they were talking about like how grocery stores and Stop and Shop or ShopRite, something like that. And then one girl looks at me and she's like, hey, why are you telling her about it? I'm sure they don't have grocery stores in India. Like the most stupid and like it was just uninformed statement. Like I felt so annoyed. I didn't say anything to her in the moment. I was just like, no, we do. They're just as big and whatever. And then like in that moment I knew I didn't want to hang out with those group of people, and within 10 minutes I went back to my room, because that's the most annoying thing I've heard. I'm going to the same college as you guys. I've been able to pay for my flight. I can speak English. I'm in the same classes as you guys. I'm doing just as well. So what makes you think that I don't come from a country that has the same things? It's the 21st century. Just because it's a third world country doesn't mean you can like make these assumptions that we don't have things. And there's always like a nicer way to ask. If you genuinely don't know, you can be like, hey, what's it like in India? You don't have to be like, I'm sure they don't have those. Which is like,
I just like, also as like an East Asian person, because people like to look at me and be like, you're so kawaii, and I'm like, I'm not even Japanese, but okay.
I'm about to say, you don't even look.
I know, but I'm Asian, and I lived with like, I feel like in a lot of friendships that I have been infantilized, like that I just, like them laughing because I don't know a fact about America. Or like, I do feel like treated differently, like they're like, oh my gosh, like don't let Teddy do that, or like be careful because like Teddy might do this, and like it's just like there's a language around talking about me that feels specific to putting me down as a character and infantilizing me and making me seem like much younger and like childish because I'm naive and I'm in a new country and I'm like learning the American ways or whatever. And
no, I'm not gonna lie, when I first came here, like I thought, okay, so first of all, they lied on that tour, man. They were like, oh yeah, diversity is great here, like we have a whole bunch of clubs and people and like all this other stuff. And then when I got here, the only people that I really like vibed with at first was the athletes, like, and so it's kind of crazy because it has like this thing where they're like, oh yeah, we're not racist, but I fully would go into class and I'm pretty sure all of us have had this, you're always the only one in the room that's a person of color, or you're like the person who everybody, like, for example, if a teacher says something about like people of color or something, everybody just stares at you in the room, like they just all look at you, and then they're like, oh, what are your opinions? And it's like, why can't I just sit here and be quiet? Like, why can't y'all just leave me alone? Like, I'm just trying to take class like y'all are. I had a teacher who fully was like, because I speak Arabic, it was hard for me to do a secondary language again, because a lot of my, like, you know, Arabic is very high, like, like stuff like that. And so speaking other languages sometimes is a little hard because you tend to make like those sounds. And you don't mean to, like, it's just what you're used to. And I fully had a teacher like tell me, oh, like, you need to stop thinking about it like it's Arabic and you need to try and actually speak the language. And went into like this whole thing about how like she didn't really like teaching like the black students because like we couldn't read and we couldn't like really write and stuff like that. And so like, yeah, I had a time. Yeah, I've had a time.
Oh my god. My FIS was like an English literature one, and I had a bit, there were a couple of people, I don't want to speak for the other people, but there were a couple of people that had an issue with this dawn. Me specifically, because the class was full of white
girls and 1 white man, and then there were like 3 people of color, I would say, including myself, and you could very evidently see the difference with how this man would behave with the people of color versus how he would behave with the white women and the white men. With me specifically, because I can only speak for myself, a lot of ignorance. I would say a lot of ignorance. I mean, I'm taking an English literature FYS and I'm doing well in your class, but in our like one-on-one conferences, this man would like, he'd have the audacity to ask me shit like, hey, how do you contact your family? Do you kind of like write them letters, and like do they write you letters back and you post it and stuff? And I had to be like, so I have FaceTime just the way you do, like, and it wasn't a one-time thing. It was every conference with him. And like, first time I was like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna explain it to him politely. But then if you ask me the same, how do you contact your family questions, do you write them letters, do you know what Netflix is? If you don't have access to streaming platforms, please ask dash white girl to help you download it, and please get a hold of it. How do you use Zoom? Do you know how to navigate your way around, blah blah blah. And I feel like after a point I got so demotivated, I just did not attend his classes, did not write well for his classes, and I just wouldn't do well, and he still gave me a good grade, and that was my bare minimum of work. I know I can do better, but I think he gave me a good grade because he just didn't expect me to write anything better, and like whatever my bare minimum was, he was like, oh, this is fucking amazing, you can speak English.
To me, because before I committed, I called them, then I did a tour with them, and I like spoke to one of their like representatives or whatever, and I emailed them. I did all these things.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, bestie, listen, I need to eat halal food or I will die.
Yeah.
That wasn't that dramatic, but like,
Yeah.
they were like, oh, don't worry, we have halal food, we have kosher food,
Oh
we
my
have
God.
we have all kinds of food.
No, they just had vegan.
Wait, what the fuck?
And then they're like, we have a separate halal kitchen as well.
lied.
And I was like, okay, cool. So I can commit to this college. And I come here and there's like none of that.
Wait, what?
Wait, so
Yeah.
what do you
They
eat?
said they had
Oh, I'm not on the meal plan anymore.
Yeah, I don't
Oh,
eat that
shit.
food.
I
I
got
cook
off.
my own food.
Same.
Because I'm also like, I'm very allergic to pork, and then also I don't eat it because I'm Muslim.
Yeah.
So literally, like, I fully cannot eat any of the food
Yeah.
that they have, and then they cross-contaminate everything. And they don't realize, like, number one, when you grow up and you're Muslim, like, you already don't eat pork. Like,
Yeah.
so your body isn't used to it,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
regardless of whether you're allergic to it or not, like, you're going to have a reaction to it.
Yeah.
And so I fully, like, I had to stop eating here and like stop getting food here and stuff because like I could not, I would literally have reactions every single day. Like it was bad. And yeah, so it was Ramadan and we were fasting and stuff. And at first, like, there was this place where it was it was Bates, and then there was the pub. And so the pub would close at 9. And when you're fasting, you break fast around like 8:30, 8:45, like. And so you're fasting all day, like and then you only have 15 minutes to get food. And if you don't make it within that 15 minutes, you're starving.
Yeah.
So I fully like had to go to the school and be like, listen, like, there are people who are athletes and there are people who are not athletes and stuff, but mostly like everybody has classes, people have like stuff that they have to do. So like that little bit of time, that 30 minutes that we have, or like that 15 minutes that we have, like that's not enough time for me to go and get a meal, go and like have something to eat. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? And so we fully had to get them to, like, me and 3 other people probably, like, we went to the diversity office, we had them like buy us like halal food and everything because of the fact that like they, number one, and then also like all of the food that they had, they were cross-contaminating. So, and it's like, it's fully Ramadan. Like, I'm not about to like have pork on my food while I'm sitting here praying and doing al-Fatiha and like I'm doing all of that and then I'm fully eating pork or something.
I got this.
Okay, so we were reading a poem written by Robert Lowell. He's a white American author in the 50s, and he wrote this poem using the N-word. And my professor, for context, before this, every time we read a poem that had an N-word in it, he never said it. He just would skip over it. Like, he would be like, blah, 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 pause, blah, 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 blah. He just didn't say it.
Yeah.
And this class, half the class was absent, including the one black student in our class. And he reads a poem, and he pauses before the word and continues to say the N-word.
Oh no.
And I was sitting there like, that did not just happen. Like, I could not have heard that correctly because it didn't make sense because he'd never say it. He had never said it before. So I was like, there's no way he just said that. And I was like gaslighting myself into being like, I'm just imagining things. And like nobody said anything, but we all seemed like really shocked. And I feel so bad that like nobody said anything, but I think that it was a situation where we were like, did that just happen? And so like class ends, I like out of that class, I'm like, okay, that didn't just happen. And I was like, okay, I don't know if that's real. And I like went up to other people in my class and I was like, did you guys hear that? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, okay, so it's not just me. So I was like, I'm gonna report him.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's it.
I'm really glad that you
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't reported him yet because I don't know how it works, but I think you just emailed Danny.
Yeah.
No, but I'm really glad that you actually, because it doesn't directly impact you. I know it's still an offensive thing, but a lot of people would just be like, oh, that's fucked up, and then not do anything about it.
So yeah,
So
but
glad
it's
that you
like
are.
it's just so uncomfortable to know, like with the whole context. Like I kept wondering, like, was it because the one black student wasn't there? Like,
That's
was
the
it?
N-word is never like a coincidence in
Yeah.
this world. Like,
Yeah,
it's
it
never
makes
how it
me
works.
like scared about like what he's like when no one's around. You know.
So there was this person, and freshman year she had a Pakistani roommate, and it wasn't me, it was someone else. And then over the summer she crashed at the place I was living at, and like she got really, really high one night, and I was just in the kitchen because I was making food because I was hungry, and she's like sitting there and she starts talking to me, and I'm like, oh cool, and we start talking about colors, and I'm like, yeah, red is like a really cool color, I feel like I would look nice in red, and like we're talking about this, she's like, I know, you look great in your red sari, and I was like, wait, what? I've never owned a red sari. First of all, I've never worn a red sari. And she's like, no, I saw it on your Instagram. And I was like, no, I've never posted on my Instagram in a red sari because I don't own one. Yeah. Are you telling me what's on my Instagram right now? And she's like, oh, it might have been like my roommate because you're both Pakistani. I thought you were the same person.
Racist.
Okay. So
Racist.
I thought so, and then I was like, maybe it's just because she got high and confused. And
Still racist.
yeah, but like it took me so long, so I was like,
Racist.
maybe she wasn't racist, and it was just like confusing in a moment.
The fact that it was confusing for that she cannot identify you as your own individual.
Yeah.
Does that just mean she looks at a person and she goes, oh, Pakistani?
It's the same.
Like that's all she
That is
looks
how we
at.
identify us, which fucking blows my mind.
We have that discussion.
I don't need
I
Who
don't
grown
like
ass
this.
adult?
I don't like this. Like they've shook their like responsibility onto themselves.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
you
Like
are
apologizing for you existing in public. I think I would have punched them in the face.
Yeah.
That
It's just
one. That
awful.
one right there. Apologizing for you existing. That one right there.
I think these places, they're just like dreamscapes for liberal white people. But that's it. Anyone else comes here and they're like,
Yeah.
I have to go.
And yeah, I mean, I love Hong Kong, and I feel like people here don't get that like other places are better than America, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Like they couldn't conceive, like it seems like people can't understand that like living in Hong Kong could be preferable.
Yeah. It like blows their minds. This underlying expectation that if you're like if it's not America, then it's going to be less in some way or the other. Like either
Or it's irrelevant.
like if you are Indian and you come to America and people are like, how are you liking America? And your answer is, I'm not liking it as much as I like home. They're going to assume that like you're just timid. You're not built for the American life or something. When in reality, this place just kind of sucks for some people.
Yeah.
Like that's just how it works. The same way that no one like throws a fit if a white person goes to India and complains, because you're like, yeah, you're not from here, you might not like it, and it's just normal to not like different places. But like when it's specifically America, they're like, no, there's something wrong with you.
My parents are immigrants from the Philippines, and they immigrated to Canada when I was, and then they had me there. And my dad is like a huge capitalist, but I just recognize that he doesn't even have the background to be anti-capitalist because he was an immigrant in Canada, and it served him to work within business and like be in investments and work towards this capitalist American dream, because that was the only way to survive and like keep a family afloat as a Filipino immigrant. But fuck nowhere Canada. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, pursue your passions? No offense, but you can't.
It's difficult to participate because we all, sure, we may have different like versions of history and stuff, but we all have a basic education. And coming in here trying to have a conversation with me in order to sort of pretend that you're empathizing by just like throwing information at me, going like, oh, I'm an ally, I know these random facts, is not like, I don't give a fuck. Like, speak to me like a normal person then. And maybe we'll know.
It's funny that you've experienced that, because I've never experienced anyone being like, oh, I'm an ally. I've only ever had experiences with people being like, just talking about things that concern them, about their country, not even inquiring about mine, and then giving me shit about not knowing anything about their country, which is very funny. And if you're coming to college, you know you're going to be surrounded with like diverse.
That's why they came to college.
We come to college and we are expected to know everything, and if we don't know anything, we're called out on it.
And if you do know something, if I do know more about American history than some random fucker, then it's just sort of like, oh,
Yeah.
Just take accountability, apologize, and be a better person.
And like move on. Also, don't linger.
Yeah, and that's the point. You come to college to learn, and it's uncomfortable, but like you mess up, you find out why you're wrong, and then you literally never fuck up again. Like, that's just how it works.
I also feel like that's a very big difference. Like, I feel like every time I've made a mistake while being on campus, when it has come to being like politically correct, I have checked myself and changed that. Like, just with the culture and the environment that I'm in right now is very different from what it is like back home. And I've checked myself, made it very aware, like made people aware that I'm learning, and I've apologized, been like aware of everything. But when people make the same mistake with me, they don't take the same accountability. I have noticed that they kind of like, they don't feel bad about it. They don't see my reaction. Whereas if I make a mistake with someone's pronouns, or if I'm making a mistake with knowing like the political environment and I'm not informed because I genuinely don't know, I will say, okay, I'm so sorry, wasn't aware, and then I'll move on. But they don't do the same with me. I've had so much shit said to me and I've let it slide. If that was to happen to me, I'd get cancelled like within 3 seconds.
Exactly.
I feel like people need to learn how to be mature about taking accountability and not whinging about it. And because that just makes the entire thing more awkward, and it makes me feel like I can't bring things up because I know it's going to be this whole thing where they're going to be uncomfortable and like profusely apologize instead of this like a mature conversation where they're like, yeah, that was wrong, I take accountability for what I said, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. That's literally all I need.
And it's also just like, we're always adjusting to this place anyway. Like, that's what we're constantly doing. And then even when we're trying to call someone out on, I don't know, like just being a cunt, or just like being ignorant, or even just making a mistake, even then we're just sort of like adjusting to them, because we have to like call them out in a way that keeps everything calm and comfortable and not awkward and alright, but also stand up for ourselves because we don't want them to think that we're pushovers. It's a whole thing, like you're still adjusting to the people around you, which is so stupid. Even in that moment when you're calling someone out or not, like, you're like, fully I'm in agreement and stuff. Like, yes, they say some really ignorant shit and all that, but it's also like, I shouldn't have to, because I don't want to be. Also because if I'm in a fucking politics class, or I'm in an economics or history class or whatever, I don't want to be the cunt that's, you know, like yelling at people or pointing people's like ignorance out and stuff, because it's awkward and it's uncomfortable, and I don't want to consistently be the person that makes everyone uncomfortable because they are ignorant or they're disrespecting my culture, where I'm from. So maybe when you're, instead of expecting every brown person to sort of stand up for themselves when they are wrong or whatever, POC, anything, international student, maybe educate yourself, because it's not that hard and you have every single resource at your disposal. And maybe if you, and honestly, the classes here are, at least the ones that I've taken thus far, are international. They have international perspectives. But for some reason, the only sections of the class that anyone's interested in volunteering for or writing papers for or presenting for are the ones that have to do with America. If we're dealing with like 6 countries in different sections in each week, the one that's fought over the most is like the UN section or the NSC section. Like there's so much in your hands that you could actually be using, but instead you're relying on like impact posts on Instagram to get your information and like be woke about it. Like it's so performative, and it's just full paradigm shift to come here and not be wanted. Like no one wants to fucking believe that, so of course we'll tell ourselves that that's not what they think, and like it's just us telling ourselves that this sucks and like they hate us. Like we don't want to be right about this at all. No one wants to be, but it does suck.